lab coat, you know what I mean, these physicists and all these people, they talk about a lot of the things that I'm talking about. And it's important for people to know that, because you'll learn that you're not just talking to phase one, and these are not my theories or how I feel about this, all right? So this is the same thing with the knowledge. Okay, so they say, doesn't it violate that it seems that the realm is moving faster than the speed of light? Because remember, they told you that the realm that we're in can only move up to the speed of light. In terms of the geometry of the universe, scientists have also theorized that the shape of the universe could indeed be spherical. Didn't I tell y'all that? You know what I'm saying? When I said that we're in the center and everything is moving in all ways around us. So you have to think about what I'm really saying. If you put yourself in the center, I think I'll break it down as we read on. You put yourself in the center and you shoot out in every direction that you possibly can, and you connect all those dots, it'll make a sphere. That's the shape of the universe, as they call it. So the only shape that could be made from an occurrence of perpetual motion in the form of energy in every direction would be a sphere. Imagine the beginning or starting point as a dot. So if you can imagine that or draw that out, okay, imagine a dot. If you were to draw lines out from the dot of the same length in as many directions as possible, you would find that if you were to connect the ends of those lines together by drawing one line to connect those points, you would end up with the circle around that dot. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, that circle is the two-dimensional form of a sphere. This should help you visualize the universe as a sphere having started at a single point and expanded in all ways, always. All right? Always, A-L-L-W-A-Y-S. Always, A-L-W-A-Y-S. Okay? So as this universe expands, so should your consciousness of its expansion. Does that make sense? This is because you are the center of the universe, or the center of your system, the light that burns in the darkness. You are also the solar system. Look closely at the word solar, as this word is also phonetically soul, S-O-U-L-R-A-R. All right. The soul is that inner sun, and that sun is the light. This is why the Son of God, Jesus, is portrayed pointing to the solar plexus, that area of the body that sits right beneath the chest, seemingly making the reminder that is, don't forget the sun, the soul, S-O-U-L, that burns within you as your soul, as well as without you as the sun. Remember, you call this the solar system that you're in. Okay? So you have a solar plexus inside of you, and you have a solar system that is outside of you, that you're within. Jesus points to the solar plexus. I have an image there. Then I reference something. I say John 1:9. You see 1:9, right? It's important. 19. The light is the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. What light is that? It's the true light. Okay? Write that down. True light. You go research True Light. Dr. York on YouTube. True Light tapes. Dr. York, True Light. Okay? This number 19 is the number 19. This is an important number as it represents the travels from an animalistic, lustful-minded, undeveloped, carnal-based being to a godly, love-minded, developed, spiritual-based being. Isn't that what we're working on here? And while we're here doing our best, I shouldn't say trying, doing our best to achieve that level, the higher level, your higher you, okay? It doesn't matter if you are a Christian or not. You can understand what I'm about to explain. It's time for us to return to the true light. If there's a true light, then there must also be what? A false light or an illusion. Our divinity is and has been on the line for a while, yet children are still being born, and so there's still hope for the re-emergence of the true light. We, the messengers, have been on this walk for ages, pleading with the human race that they might finally understand the ways in which they've transgressed. Human beings have become such instinctual beings that they've grown to reject the importance of loving one another and existing in an agreeable frequency, and have instead made this life about making a living. We don't have to make a living. Life is already here for us to experience. Anybody ever thought about that before? Why do you have to make a living? Does that make sense? Peace, Sean. I see you. Right? Why does that make sense? Why is that something that people have to do? Does that make sense to people? I'm here to make a living. I'm just trying to make a living. You don't have to do that. You already are living. You already are experiencing life here. Why do you have to make it into something? No, you don't have to. But that's what they want people to think, that is something that you literally have to survive to do. You have to survive to survive. No, you're already living. All of the horrors, all of the things that mankind, the struggles that mankind is facing, it's per his own accord or their own accord. It doesn't have to be this way. All right. Put away the sin of the lust of this world and turn back to love, or the heart chakra, anun, or the chakra, anahata. This is the green energy of El Kadir. And please do make note and keep in mind that the word sin only means what? To miss the mark, or to fall short, or to transgress. And then they have again, so I read for you first John 1:9, right? And now I'm reading a site that I put in my book, 1 John 1:9, okay? If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. I said the issue with this is if people have become too proud to even look around and bring themselves to admit how the majority of human beings have been living their lives is out of order, then how can we even begin to right ourselves? Not solely for the sake of, but even if just in case there are watchers or other beings in the realms galactically to keep things in order before human beings or the earthly humanoid beings were ever created or brought to be. Here's what the Holy Quran says the angels had to say about this idea. This is important. Listen, the Quran chapter 6 verse 6, it says, have they not considered how many generations we destroyed before them? We had established on them on earth more firmly than we established you. And we sent the clouds pouring down abundant rain on them. And we made rivers flow beneath them. But we destroyed them for their sins and established other civilizations after them. It's right there in the Quran. It's like they're telling people. So this is an extraterrestrial book. We know that by now. We should know that if you've been walking with me from the class about a week ago, right? So now they're telling you from this extraterrestrial record that they have destroyed civilizations before this one. All right. And the civilizations that are existing now are established civilizations that came after the destructions of what they call your ancestors, or who we call our ancestors. OK, and they were destroyed for their sins or their transgressions. OK, so the Holy Quran made mention of other generations of people who were destroyed in the earth by these extraterrestrial beings or gods or aliens or angels or Anunnaki or Neteru or sky guys. Think of all the times you've heard of these stories. You may remember hearing about the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, the two cities that were destroyed in the Bible because the inhabitants had become unjustly immoral, sinning boastfully. This destruction story ties you back to the Dead Sea Scrolls and the ancient Sumerian stories of the cities that were destroyed by who you call the gods for the same sins or transgressions. Am I losing anybody? So we've already written down in history or passed down in history, extraterrestrial people came to this realm and said, look, we destroyed your ancestors for this. Or when this place was out of order, we did this. When Enlil destroyed the human beings, what did he say? They too loud. They out of order. Okay? Go and destroy those people. You understand that? Now, why they do this? You're made in the image and after the likeness of the Most High, or you're made in the image and after the likeness of these extraterrestrial beings. If you can ask yourself why you would do certain things, maybe it'll help you understand that they wanted to separate you from the operations of God beings. That's why they say image and after the likeness of humanoid, as in the symmetry of arm, leg, arm, head, Allah. Okay. And then you have the characteristics of God. What do you be talking about? God is a jealous God. Which one? Which one is the jealous one? Because not all of them were like that. Which one was the jealous one? Which one wanted to destroy mankind and which one wanted to save mankind? If you want to tell the truth, this was before the Bible story. Enki said he wanted to save them, and Lil said get rid of all of them. You understand? So they say it as one person, God is a jealous God. No, Enlil operated that way. He didn't want anybody to have any other gods worshiping or following after their orders. And he wanted it like that, according to the ancient Sumerian tablets. You understand that? So all these characteristics, jealousy, envy, hate, anger. I have hated Esau. Esau, who I have hated. God can hate somebody? Yes. But you want to think of some spirit that means good. God didn't always do good things. You know what I'm saying? Bombing Sodom and Gomorrah, killing all those people. And if you read deeper into it, the innocent ones who died alongside those people, all right, that was murder. But it says, thou shalt not murder. So does God follow his own law? The answer is no. which means what? Do the gods follow their own law? No, they do not. So which means what? When you say the word God or gods, you're not talking about the same race of beings or the same groups of beings every time you say that word. It's just something that they normalize for people to say. And now people have gotten so mystified with the word, you can't even say the word God around conscious people without them thinking you're talking about the Christian God or talking about some spirit floating around, which means they didn't even read into the deeper stories of how this came about linguistically and historically before you arrived to that God that you're using now. Come on. You understand? And I got an image there that shows Sodom and Gomorrah being bombed and destroyed. So if we say fire rained down from heaven and it destroyed the two cities, what are we saying? We're saying we released nuclear weapons on those cities. And those weren't the only cities. Go look it up. The Jordan cities, the rest of them cities that were destroyed that they talk about in the Sumerian tablets. Okay? And they were destroyed by nuclear weapons, thermonuclear warfare. You understand that? It's not new. But if you're reading it from a childlike perspective, or from a perspective of someone who's been under a ghost spell, you'll think that clouds pulled up and fire just rained out of clouds. How does that happen? You know what I'm saying? That's not what occurred. What do you think that means when you say Lot's wife was turned to a pillar of salt? Let me tell you something. If you know anything about what happened with man was literally playing God. They bombed the whole city. Okay, but they didn't even have a justification for it. What they said it was the retaliation for something that happened from a whole military, the Japanese military. Okay, that had nothing to do with civilians, but they still killed those civilians, innocent blood shed, and people's bodies were incinerated. All right, turned to pillars of ash, which would look like what if you were looking at it? If you're looking back and you see somebody standing out in the distance and you see their body turn to ash, you say, oh, she got turned to a pillar of salt. What do you mean pillar of salt? The body just turns into, no, she was hit with the radio blast. Come on. You understand? Like it should make sense to people now. Like you standing in that blast radius, it's going to hit you. All right. And you will be incinerated. So when they said don't look back or don't go back, don't turn back, it don't mean you can't look at the fire. You understand? It means don't try to run back and save whoever you think you're going back to save. Or don't try to run back and grab anything. And she didn't listen according to that story.
Oh, in the Quran, when you read more about that particular story in the Quran, it talks about lagging behind, where the Malaika or the angels were saying they already know who's going to lag behind and who isn't. So if the pastor's speaking about it, because they don't really have much scholarship on these things, they just only know what they know or believe what they believe. The pastor would tell you that Lot's wife looked back and that's how she got turned to a pillar of salt. So then your question would be like, Pastor, how the fuck did that happen? How did her looking back at fire turn her into a pillar of salt? Well, right now, if I stare at a fire, that doesn't happen. No, she didn't just turn back. They have mistranslations. They don't know what they're saying. The words was to lag behind. She lagged behind. Now, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Because if I'm sending you to the mountains, that's where you're supposed to be going. You're supposed to be going to the mountains or some area isolated before you go to those mountains. And then you go to the mountains so that you could survive what comes after that, after the destruction, or after the explosion itself. If you don't go to those mountains and you lag behind, all right, thinking that it's just some stones finna fall with fire, and you get hit with a radio blast, all right, or the blast radius, you get hit with a blast, which is what the Quran says. You go read the book of the Quran and look up the story of Lot and Sabria, and it speaks about a blast, okay? If you get hit with that blast, you should find it in either the chapter 15. So Surah 11 or 15 of the Quran, you should be able to find it. But you get hit with a blast, that means that you were in the blast radius. And they called it literally, listen, don't take my word for it. They literally called it the blast in the Quran. So if you only read in the Bible, you don't have enough. That's why I tell you got to read all of these books to really get the full spectrum of what is even being spoken about. Even if you want to say, oh, it's all allegory, you don't have everything you need to put the allegory together to teach it unless you've read it. And then you find out, well, there was no way that could have just been a fire. If that was even literal, there was no way that could have just been a fire, because looking at a fire doesn't turn people to, no, she lagged behind. That's what the Quran said. So no, she didn't turn back as in turn back and face. All right. She turned back as in lag behind, and she didn't listen. So why would they send them to the mountains? Well, you go research that to this day. Ask yourself, how did Prophet Rasulullah Muhammad know this? Or how did the people that wrote the Bible know anything about going to a mountain to flee from this type of destruction? Well, right now, if you look it up today, if you were in the mountains, All right. After a nuclear weapon were released and detonated, okay, the summit itself will absorb the blast. It'll absorb the effects of the blast after it is released. The summit itself of the mountain. And then the atmosphere of the mountain, the closer you get to the top of the mountain, if you don't notice, the atmospheres change. All right. The actual atmosphere on top of the mountain would cause for you to be protected from, and the alteration of the atmosphere will cause you to be protected from and kept away from the nuclear fallout that comes right after that. You understand? People don't know this, but that's why they sent them to the mountains. You feel what I'm saying? So it wasn't like they said, go to the mountains, my son, just for no fucking reason. If you were in a threat right now for a nuclear weapon, you Americans, if y'all were under a threat right now, if you were in the mountains, you're better off surviving. If you were in the mountains, that's your best bet to survive. Other than that, you have to be beneath terror, all right, or in the bunkers or in the pits, as they called it, all right, or in shoals somewhere, because anything that's near that detonation, all right, this is not to say that it's pure that you're going to just survive it just because you're in the mountain. If the detonation happens in the mountains, you got another problem. But it doesn't happen in the mountains, which, what are the odds of it not happening? Nuclear weapons cost money. So ain't nobody trying to waste nuclear weapons. Let's get that clear. Money and war, they go hand in hand. So if there were ever, and there probably will be, a nuclear or a thermonuclear war that was to take place in America, all right, they wouldn't try to waste their weapons. They would be targeting populated areas. So all of the major cities, they're going straight for them. Atlanta, right? New York, okay? Cali, major cities will definitely be targeted. Of the ones I just named, there'll probably be Atlanta and New York that are the most targeted, okay? Because there's certain gas lines that are right under the airports in these specific areas that are linked to so many different gas lines that if one of these gas lines got hit, even from one explosion, it'll be like a fault line. It'll take off half of the fucking North America. All them cities will be destroyed. And I'm telling you, I know this because I've studied all of this. And that's why I tell y'all, all the people teaching all this stuff, do they know we still at a standstill? Do they know that it's still, the great powers are still trying to figure out who gonna push the button first? No, they don't know that. You know what I'm saying? They go watch what everybody gonna do. They gonna focus on whether or not you're gonna vote this Joe Biden.